Welcome, everybody, to the NBA show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. We're at the NBA Finals, so we're going to preview the finals tonight. And remember, the Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding an online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Check them out at betting.net. I am your co-host for the NBA Finals preview show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in he's not a former national champion. He's still a national champion. It just happened 500 years ago in 1981 with the Indiana Hoosiers. Help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great today, guys. Looking forward to good NBA finals.
All right, and we have a new guest here because Dan's mom wanted him to have one of his friends on the show. Welcome to the show, Bobby Hundt. How you doing, Bobby?
I'm doing great. Thank you both for having me. And, I don't have the illustrious career that Steve Risley does, but I'm a former Hoosier as well. But, just not nearly as decorated as him.
Oh, so you went to IU, Bobby?
Yes, I did. Graduated in 2007. So
2007.
Sorry, I started going there and graduated in 2011. So I'm even younger than that. Sorry.
Oh, wow. Damn, he's young. You might be too young to be on the show. Of course, Dan Kornhauser will join us at his convenience, how he usually does. But let's go ahead and start out talking about these NBA Finals.
Mike, could you do one thing? Could you move me and being around here, Bobby around? Because I don't want to be next to Kornhauser when he shows up.
Okay. All right, so we've got the NBA Finals. We'll start off with this. Are these the two best teams, Steve?
I think they got the best team out of the East for sure. I really think I look at where the Celtics went through, who they went through. They went through some great players, They played through I had it written down, Durant and Irving. They played through the Bucks with Gianni. Then they beat the Heat in 7. I think the Celtics have earned the right to be here. Golden State, I don't know if they're the best team. Phoenix probably was the best team all season. I think that Dallas underplayed. They just didn't have the complement team around Luka. Just didn't show up the way they needed to. So I think they were the hottest shooting team the Warriors were, but I'm not sure they're the best team in the West. I think the best team in the West is the Lakers.
The Lakers. All right, Bobby, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think these are the two best teams necessarily. I think they're two of the best. And I was actually higher on the Celtics than, say, Dan was coming into the season, doing the podcast earlier on in the NBA season on Shoot the J. I picked them, I think, 4th or 5th in the East. He had them a little lower than that. Now, I didn't think they'd get this hot. I didn't think they'd play this well and make the finals. But they've shown their mettle. Like Steve alluded to, they've gone through some of the best players in the NBA, whether it's Durant and Irving, Giannis, now Jimmy Butler. On the West side, I felt like the Warriors were a very dangerous team all year. I agree, though. The Suns probably should have been here, but it's a damn shame. They messed up. So their fault for choking in that second-round series against the Mavericks. And so this is the finals we get. It's two really strong teams, but to answer the question, no, I don't necessarily think it's the two best teams.
I believe this. I believe the best teams are Golden State and Milwaukee. I think if Milwaukee has Chris Middleton, they would have taken out the Celtics. I think they would have won an NBA World Championship for the second time. Losing Middleton, I think, was way too much. Golden State, I think, undoubtedly is the best team in the West. The only reason they didn't have the best record is Steph Curry missed, a month or so of the season also, Bobby?
Yeah, no, that's fair to say. I think the Suns, blitzed out early, got ahead of everyone, and then the Warriors weren't concerned. They didn't need the home court advantage. But obviously, we saw it didn't even matter for the Suns either. And they have no one to blame but themselves. It could have even really been a finals rematch. It should have been maybe Suns and Bucks, or like you said, Warriors and Bucks. I think the Bucks were the best team in the East all year. They should have beaten the Celtics, but it was too much to overcome with Middleton not playing a lot in that series.
All right, now the Warriors are 9-0 in the playoffs so far this year. But what we've seen with the Celtics, they won 3 games in Miami. So when we go to game 1, is it better to be less rested, to be hot, come off a game 7 win, go to Golden State, catch them where they're going to have 5 or 6 days rest, Bobby? Who does game 1 favor that way?
At this point, this deep into the playoffs, I think it favors the Warriors. They are undefeated at home so far in the postseason. And there is something to be said about being hot, but I think that's more relevant in some of the other sports. I think I'd rather be more rested at this point, not have just played a Game 7. Now, the way the NBA schedules these playoffs, it's a mess, and there's always way too many days in between them. So at least for the Celtics, they played, Sunday? They have till Thursday, so that helps a little bit. But the Warriors have been resting for a week now. I think it favors the Warriors.
All right, what do you think, Steve?
I would agree. I think it definitely favors the Warriors. They had a relatively easier pathway to get to this matchup than to the Celtics. Celtics, played physical basketball big time against Miami, and I'm sure it wasn't very much easier in the earlier round matchups. So they're probably a little battered and bruised. The spot 3 or 4 or 5 days off isn't going to heal a lot of those hurts and bruises. They're going to come into this tired. They're going to take a long road trip to start with, and stay in a hotel again, and it just throws you out of sorts. Nothing like playing for a championship, playing at your own home. I know in '81 we won the national championship. The Mid-East Regionals were at Assembly Hall that year. So last year they ever let that happen, really, basically. But we got to sleep in our own beds, drive our own cars to the game, the Assembly Hall, park in our normal spots, and we were in our locker room. So it was a much better environment in terms of mental preparation for the game and everything. So strongly this favors, I believe, the Warriors right now.
All right, I think this. Overall, I think it may, but I think game one, it may give the Celtics a chance to win the game. I mean, they're coming in hot. They've played really well on the road, and the Warriors weren't really challenged against the Mavericks. I mean, they went up 3-0. They lost game 4 at Dallas. But I think short term to win this series, Bobby, is it safe to say that the Celtics have to split these first 2 games with the Warriors?
Absolutely. That's definitely their best chance. You don't want to go down 2-0 to the Warriors. Now, a lot of times there's the cliche of really haven't lost ground in the series until you've lost at home. So even if they go down 2-0, you can win 2 in Boston. But I don't want to mess with this Warriors team. There's just too much experience. They have a little more depth than the Celtics do, especially if they're to get back Iguodala and Gary Payton Jr. for this series, which they may. So if I'm the Celtics, maybe you lose game 1, but definitely game 2 you got to take. It doesn't matter if they get a split. Either way it happens, they'll be happy and should be happy.
Yeah, and I think the Boston Celtics are being slept on by a lot of the national TV media guys and by fans alike, because I think this Boston Celtics team is the best modern day defense we've seen in the last 15, 20 years. And the way they guard gives them a chance to win here. We always hear the old adage, the old cliche, Steve, the defense wins championships. If that's true, Boston has a legit chance here.
Yeah, if they can guard the perimeter as well as they guard the inside. I mean, let's say a lot of their physicality in their play was both teams that were playing, especially with Miami, was a lot of inside defense and a lot of banging them boarding inside. And I'm not sure how much their outside play, how well they defend on the outside. That's going to remain to be seen, because if you watch Steph Curry, you leave him 2 feet, he's going to hit a 3 on you, no matter where he is. And I think that Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Wiggins and those guys, they can battle inside with the Celtics. But yeah, the Celtics' best shot to steal one and get control of this thing is to win probably the first game of the playoffs. Would be great. It'd be huge, monumental for them. It'd probably set up an epic 7-game series.
Now,
otherwise, I think if they don't win the first game, that makes the second game tougher. And then if you go out 2-0, you're pretty well beat.
Well, I think not only is the Celtics defense arguably one of the best in modern history, I think Bobby is perfectly suited to combat all of Golden State's off-ball movement. Boston switches everything, which I think will make life for Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Jordan Poole difficult as they look to come off screens and get, clean shots. I think the Celtics defense matches up as well as anybody does against Golden State.
Oh, they absolutely do, and at least defensively, these teams are very similar. They can guard you 1 through 5 with a variety of different players. They can switch a lot. They're good one-on-one defenders. You don't see as many issues you're not going to see as many issues as, say, the Mavericks had or even the Heat had with guarding players out of position. These guys are mostly interchangeable. You can throw a lot of different players at you. They're long. They're athletic. This is going to be a tough matchup for the Warriors without a doubt. My main concern maybe for Boston's defense, and I still expect them to hold them to less than the Warriors have been scoring. The Warriors scored averaged 115 per game against the Mavericks in that 5-game series, and they're easily the top leading scoring team in the whole playoffs this year with about like 114. So not shy of what they scored in the last series. But I'm wondering who's going to be left open, because you would think, all right, so Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, their top 3 players are going to guard definitely Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. But then is it Jordan Poole or is it Andrew Wiggins that's going to get more open looks? That's really what I wonder, who's going to be the one that isn't covered by one of those guys, and can an Al Horford or a Robert Williams get out there and guard them? Or when they do go small with the death lineup that they like to call it for the Warriors, obviously Draymond Green you don't have to pay much attention to, but I just wonder if the Celtics are going to combat them as well with a smaller lineup. Are they going to put Derek White out there more? Are they going to have Grant Williams play more of the 4? I'm really curious how Boston's going to handle some of the wing depth that the Warriors present.
Well, I think if the Warriors go small, I think you definitely see White and Williams play a lot here. And, I mean, we know the Celtics are only going to go about 7 or 8 deep. And I think they match up well with them. And you talked about Horford. He is the only real inside presence in this series, isn't he?
Pretty much. I mean, that at least when the Warriors do go small, I would expect Jason Tatum to go down in the block more and present those problems and bang down low. And, Draymond Green's still pretty small considering his stature. Great defensive player, but he's still only 6'6", 6'7". So, that's not ideally Tatum's game, but we know he's capable of doing it. Horford is the main presence down there. We'll see how much guys like Kevon Looney for the Warriors play, but you're right. Horford's the only, kind of guy that can bang down there and present a problem. But with today's NBA, I still expect him to be shooting threes and doing everything outside of the paint that he usually does. So it's still going to be more, I think, a small ball lineup for both teams as we go through the series.
All right, I want to remind everybody, head over now and see for yourself. Betting.net makes it easy to find the best online legal casinos and sports books in your state. Make sure you check them out at betting.net and check in the link in the description to the video down below if you're on YouTube for a link to Caesars Sportsbook. All right, almost choked to death right there, Steve. My sinuses are killing me. But when you look at Boston, I mean, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, I think this whole thing, Steve, comes down to what you get out of guys like Grant Williams, Derek White, because I think this bench, we've seen them play well on the road. And my question for the Boston Celtics is this, though. Can they play at home? Because we saw them with a chance to knock out the Miami Heat on a couple occasions, and we saw it in the earlier series against Milwaukee. And it also almost looks like, to me, in a big situation at home, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of choke, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I mean, the only thing I can say is that I don't know if they just expected, because they were playing in the Garden, that they were going to win in Game 6. And obviously that didn't happen, because they turned right around, and I thought, this is over. They're going to Miami, and Miami's got all the momentum and all the presence down there now. Their fans are going to be fairly rabid. But they went down there and just really shut the coffin on Miami real quickly and controlled that game from front start. So I'm not sure that it matters. The Celtics seem to be a team that don't really matter to them where they play. I think the Game 6, they just had an off game. And I wouldn't read a lot into that right now until I see first game in the Garden and see what they do. But I think a lot depends on how well they play out at Golden State.
Dan, will you quit messing with your thing? Go ahead, Steve.
Oh.
Look, Steve, look what the cat dragged in. Dan Kornhauser's joined us.
All right.
He loves messing with his thing.
Danny. So I'm not sure that it really matters to any great degree where the Celtics play. They look strong on the road and at home. Given that, I think they might have a better presence at both places than the Warriors are going to have.
All right, Dan, quit messing with buttons, all right?
My connection sucks down here. Sorry, guys.
Well, you suck. You're late, too, by like 18 minutes. All right, so, Dan, when we look at this series, we've already talked about how good Boston's defense is. I think that it's easy to say here, or safe to say, that Golden State will want to operate early in the shot clock. But with how well Boston recovers the shooters, a lot of these possessions could drag out longer than the Warriors would like. at which point this gives Boston an advantage. Now, I know you, as Bobby told us on your Shooting to Jay show, that you didn't think Boston was that good. Does Boston have a shot here?
Oh yeah, they absolutely have a shot. They wouldn't if they didn't, they wouldn't be here.
Well, how about this too? This is also the thing. The reason I brought up Golden State operating in a shot clock is Golden State has a propensity to turn the ball over, and if Boston puts enough pressure on the ball to make them, go 15, 20 seconds into the possession, and they're chasing and doubling and recovering and switching, they could cause turnovers here and give them a much better chance to win this game and series.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what? Both teams have a knack for the untimely turnover. You could just look back at the Miami series. Boston liked to turn the ball over in very untimely situations, and that's what
especially at home.
Yeah, and that's what let Miami come back when they should have blown Miami out. Not only in the games that they did, but they should have blown them out in Game 7 too, if they didn't turn the ball over as much as they did. So both teams have that knack, that late turnover, those ugly turnovers. So whichever team, doesn't turn the ball over and plays good defense will win the chip. That's pretty much what it comes down to, doesn't it, boys?
Well, if it comes down to who has the better defense, does that mean you favor Boston?
Defensively, yes, Boston is favored, but I'm not taking Boston in this series. Spoiler alert.
Well, I mean, spoiler alert, when have you ever been right picking something on these shows?
Well, I have my moments.
What moment was that? Oh, you did? I mean, we had, 25 weeks or 20 weeks of NFL pick'em shows, and I think Dan won once or twice, wasn't it, Steve? And he finished Bobby Dan finished 700 games out of first place.
I believe it. I watched some of those shows, and his picks were brutal. I think the few games that he got right were ones I told him about.
It probably was.
Thanks.
If it wasn't for Bobby, you would be nothing, Dan. All right, so let's look at this. Dan, let's go back to you real quick. Do you think these are the two best teams in the NBA?
No, I don't. But Boston deserves this. And
they deserve it, yeah. But, I mean, to me, Boston's there because of the injury to Chris Middleton.
Yeah, I was going to say, they've shown that they belong there. They won tough series against really good, proven teams. So they belong there. But they're not the best. If Middleton was healthy, I think that would have been all the difference in that series. They wouldn't even be here at this point. It would have been Milwaukee versus the Heat in the last series, and Boston, we wouldn't be talking about them. They're a long gone afterthought. So I don't think they're the best. They're one of the top two, but they absolutely belong.
All right, so let me ask you this. Does size matter, Steve? Because the Warriors have statistically been a better rebounding team than the Celtics in the postseason. But if you look at the matchups, Golden State played a small Dallas team and a Memphis team that was without Steven Adams for half the series. And when Adams did play, he hurt them on the glass board and actually helped them. Boston had to deal with the Bucks in the Heat. So does the size matter here? Will the Celtics out-rebound the Warriors? Did we just see the Warriors do that in the Western Conference playoffs because they were going against smaller teams?
I think size matters if you got one of the 4 or 5 greatest centers in the NBA. Jabbar, Chamberlain, Olajuwon, Russell. You got one of those guys, size matters. With these two teams, I think effort, energy, heart, and getting after it, intensity are going to count more than size because relatively these teams are all pretty much right around the same size.
Well, I kind of disagree just because you got Horford, and depending on the health of Robert Williams, I think they can play bigger than Golden State.
Mike? How old is Horford?
What's that matter?
He's been around forever.
I don't think he's been around forever.
He's 35 or 36 now.
Yeah,
okay,
that's not forever.
Pretty old.
Damn, he's 20 years younger than me. He's fine.
Yeah, and you were telling me today you can't get your hands above your head, shoulders anymore?
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's 20 years ago I could.
Yeah, well, okay. All right, so we'll take that. Yeah, Horford, I think if Horford was 20 years younger or 10 years younger, I think that size might matter, but I think his age is going to prohibit how much time he's going to be able to play, and how much they're going to be able to use him. So it makes him relatively ineffective. I'd rather take somebody at a lesser height, but who's just physicality, getting after it, playing hard, playing with a heck of a lot of intensity. The amount of time he's on the court, not just some of the time, I'd rather have that kind of player.
Man, I'd rather have Horford over anybody in here. But the guy that stands out to me is Kevon Looney for Golden State because he had 22 rebounds. During the series, was it in Dallas? I think it was, or Memphis. I can't remember which one that, but I remember he had 22 rebounds there. I think Kevon Looney is a huge thing here because actually we talked about Steven Adams on, Memphis. I think it was against Memphis, but it was when Steven Adams was playing too in Game 6 in that clincher. He had 22 rebounds, including 11 offensive to just 1 for Adams. So I think the Golden State's obviously going to play small with Draymond Green, but I think Kevon Looney is a guy that can do a lot of damage here, Bobby.
I think early in games, especially, he could do damage, especially on the offensive glass. If he's getting Robert Williams or Al Horford into foul trouble, that certainly could be a bad thing for Boston early in games. But I think more so, it's just going to wear them down over the course of the series when the Warriors go small. And I alluded to it earlier that Gary Payton Jr. and Andre Iguodala might be healthy enough to actually play in this series. If everyone remembers, Gary Payton Jr. earlier in the playoffs hurt his elbow on a hard foul. I think against the Grizzlies, Desmond Bane knocked him down, and he might actually play in Game 1. Then Iguodala's had a neck injury. He's been out for most of these games. So those are 2 more versatile wing players that are going to force the Boston Celtics to go small at times. They're not going to be able to leave Horford and Robert Williams out there for too long, especially not together. So I think that's really going to wear on them as time goes on. And talk about the fourth quarters, that's really where the Warriors have made their hay in this postseason. They've been outstanding in the fourth quarter. Obviously, they can shoot. We know that, but they just present so many matchup problems for teams. Now, I think the Celtics are going to deal with it better than teams like the Mavericks or the Grizzlies. I do think the Celtics are the best competition they're going to play, since unfortunately we didn't get to see them play the Suns. But I think some of those role players like Looney, like Jordan Poole, even some of those vet like Iguodala, those are really going to make a huge difference against the Celtics.
All right, so Dan, right now when you look at this, which superstar is peaking at the right time between Golden State and Boston? You've got Steph Curry, you got Jason Tatum. I think this is a very compelling matchup. You've got Curry, who's a 2-time MVP, probably the greatest shooter in league history, a second-team All-NBA player this year. Tatum's only 24 years old. He's less accomplished, but he did make the NBA All-Star first team this year, NBA All-Team first team this year. Who do you think is peaking at the right time here? And is it more of you want to take the experienced Curry, or do you want the guy that has the younger legs in Tatum?
I'm gonna go with Tatum if it's between these two guys of who's peaking at the right time. Tatum's been on a tear. He was the Eastern Conference Final MVP for a reason. He is a walking bucket, and he made some really, really clutch shots down the stretch for Boston. And I was very impressed. I know I was talking with Bob and our buddy Greg, via text and in our group chats over the last few weeks about Tatum. And at one point, there was a lot of talk of Tatum being a top 10 player in the NBA right now. And a few weeks ago, my buddy Greg was on that train, and I scoffed at it. I thought it was awful. I still don't think he's in a top 10 conversation, but he's been going in. And if he wins a championship, if they beat Curry and the Warriors and they win a chip, Tatum's going to have a place at that table. And rightly so, because if they're going to win, he's got to go in.
I mean, to tell you the truth, though, I think Klay Thompson is the clutch player on the Golden State Warriors, and I think he always has been.
I think
with the game on the line. Yeah, and the other thing about Klay Thompson, I question is, he missed, 1,000 days or something? And I don't think that he is near the defensive player that he was a few years ago, which I think could be an issue, too, for the Warriors in this series.
Well, I think where they're lucky there is that they did make the acquisition of Andrew Wiggins before last season, I believe. So they don't really need him to do that as much as they used to. They don't expect him to be that, young mid-20s athletic wing that he used to be. So at least for them, they have a little coverage there. But Klay has been a clutch player throughout his career, and that's really been the rap on Steph Curry, is that even though he has the 3 championships, he has not been the Finals MVP of any of them. Iguodala was for the first championship they won altogether, and then Kevin Durant, obviously, with the most recent 2 that they won back-to-back. So I think it's a big series for Curry, and really all the pressure's on him.
All right, what do you think, Steve? Steph Curry or Jason Tatum?
Well, I mean, the rising star is Tatum, but I think Curry's already there at that plateau, and I would never leave Curry unattended on a basketball court in a championship series because that young man can hit threes whenever he feels it. He doesn't. His shooting slumps are not long stayed. He may get a 2 or 3 shot slump, but he's coming back right after that and drilling one on you again. Tatum, I think, is the rising emerging star. He's achieving that, getting into that superstar realm. Not quite there. I think the big question is who's going to guard Tatum. Are you going to put one of your starters, Green or Thompson, on him? Or I mean, it seems like the best choice to start on him would be Wiggins. Don't you guys think?
Dan?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Wiggins on Tatum.
Yeah.
Wiggins was on Doncic here and there during their series, and he fared okay against him. I mean,
As well as you're going to fare against Doncic.
Yeah. And Tatum isn't Doncic,
No.
but he can score like him, and it's I think Wiggins is going to be up for it.
Well, and I think the other thing we look at this, Bobby, both of these teams are very well coached. I mean, Coach U at Boston, which me and Steve still haven't figured out how to say his name, so we've decided his name is Coach U. But, I mean, this is a team in Boston. It was 17-20 at almost a halfway point of the season. He's done, I think, the best job in the NBA coaching-wise.
I'll go for it. I'll say Ime Udoka. It's still not an easy name to pronounce. I might have still messed it up.
See, the bad thing is, me and Steve couldn't tell you if you got it right or not.
Yeah, and Dan won't either because I'm usually correcting him.
No, Dan can barely say his own name.
Yeah, I'm bad with names.
But no, I mean, Udoka's been outstanding for them. He actually was my Coach of the Year pick when we did our preseason picks. It wasn't right. It wound up being, I think, Monty Williams from the Suns, if I'm not mistaken. But he's done an outstanding job, and them to finish second was outstanding because no one saw that coming, especially given the record that you said they were at about halfway through the season. And I think they've only lost about 10 games total between regular season and postseason since that mark. So they've just been outstanding. They're playing well defensively, even offensively, doing enough to, make it this far. I mean, now it's helped that they've had some injuries on the other teams. Let's not forget not only Chris Middleton for the Bucks, but it definitely hurt Miami Heat not having the scoring punch of Tyler Hero for 3 games in this past series. So that helped the Celtics, but injuries are part of the game, obviously. The Warriors have also benefited from the fact that John Morant missed 2 games in that Grizzlies series. The Nuggets weren't at full strength really the whole year. But going back to Udoka, outstanding coach, but we can't forget about Steve Kerr. And one stat I saw today is that I think they've won 23 of 25 game ones in all the postseason series that he's been their coach. So the Warriors are always ready for game 1, it feels like. So this is a great coaching matchup as well, no doubt about it.
All right, so I think what we saw with Dallas against Golden State was Dallas tried to pick and roll to end up with Luka basically being guarded by Steph Curry. I think we're going to see the same thing with the Celtics with a smart Tatum pick and roll. Do you think Boston could have more success, Dan, than what Dallas had?
Oh, I definitely think they can have more success. Mostly because of the size disadvantage. Like you mentioned it earlier, you were talking about it earlier. There is, I think there is a definite size disadvantage, and they're going to go at Curry this whole series. They're going to go at Curry, they're going to go at Poole, and that's a winning recipe. Curry struggled, Poole struggled, and that's going to hurt them. That's going to hurt the Warriors.
All right, so let's go ahead. Let's pick this series, and if you guys want to talk a little bit more NBA, we can, because I know Dan's wanted to. But we'll start off with Dan. Who do you like in this series?
I'm going to go with the Warriors. I don't want to say 7, but I'm going to say 7. I want to see a classic, and these two teams I think can go the distance. It's the Warriors by a hair. It's very, very close. And the only things that really, for me, push the Warriors over are the coaching, because I think they have the better coach. That does matter at this point. The fact that they've been there, done that, they're going to show up. And I'm expecting a big Curry to put on a big performance.
All right, Bobby, agree or disagree?
I'm going to agree. I'm actually going to say Warriors in 6. It's going to be tough because that means they would have to close it out in Boston. Now, let me just say that I do not think it would be a shock at all if Boston was able to pull off this series. I do think they belong there. I think maybe they're not the best team, but they're one of the top 5 teams, and they showed it with their record. But I think the fact that the Warriors have the home court advantage is big, and then. Yes, the experience to an extent, but I just think there's just too many offensive weapons for them, whereas I don't see that on the Boston side. Unless someone like Horford or Smart or Derek White really step up big time scoring, it's mainly Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Whereas I look at the Warriors, they just come off a series where they had 6 guys average 10 or more points. Now, I don't expect Kevon Looney to do that, but when you have Jordan Poole and Draymond even pitching in with the scoring, not to mention obviously the Splash Brothers with Clay and Curry. I just think it's a little too much to overcome. Yes, Boston has a great defense, but this team has the pedigree and they've just been firing on all cylinders, scoring so many points. And I think the wearing them down and getting them in the fourth quarter is going to stay true like it has through most of these playoffs for the Warriors. So I'll go Dubs in 6.
All right, before we get to Steve, I want to remind you your top sportsbook comparison site, betting.net, offers extensive reviews and on the best sportsbooks out there. Make sure you check them out. Make sure you click on our link in the description in the YouTube video for Caesar Sportsbook, our recommended betting site. Steve, who do you got?
Well, I saw an interesting stat that I didn't like, but I was curious to see. One stat said that in the playoffs, the 16 playoff games so far for the Warriors, they've been outscored in the first 3 quarters by 7 points by their opponents. Yet in the fourth quarter alone, have outscored their opponents by 94 points. So this is a team that will not quit on you, and they will stick around and they will bide their time. And when you take the combination of the experience the Warriors have of having been and played in this series like this as much as they have, then you've got a player like Curry on the court for you as much as possible. Then you got Kerr, and then you got a host of players that are just unselfish, as everybody said, that they just they'll do whatever they got to do. They got to score. They got to defend. They seem more unselfish than any other team I've seen play in the playoffs this year, and just willing to win and get it done. I think that's a very tough combination to beat. I'm going to say that it's going to be the Warriors in 6 games.
All right, I think what we've seen, if you're watching the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs, is toughness is what wins when you get to this point. The New York Rangers in their first round series were completely outplayed, but somehow figured out a way to win. I think teams like that are very dangerous. We saw the Celtics go on the road, win Game 7 in Miami. The only thing that worries me here is I think Jason Tatum, when they had a chance to put it away in the last 2 or 3 minutes, kind of disappeared. I think that Marcus Smart needs to realize Marcus Smart is probably the 3rd or 4th best option. It needs to kind of stay out of the way of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I think Coach Hideki is the best coach in the NBA right now. I mean, if you compare what him and Steve Kerr did, I think what happened in Boston is much more impressive because, let's face it, I think most of us expected Golden State to at least be in the conference finals. A lot of us, like Dan, didn't expect the Celtics even to make the playoffs. And if they did, to barely make the playoffs. Right, Dan?
Nah, hold on.
Because Bobby picked them 4th or 5th, and you picked them lower, which means you had them barely making the playoffs.
Hold on. Let's relax. I wasn't shitting all over the Celtics all season.
He had them in the playoffs. He definitely did.
Yeah, I wasn't
play-in games
all year. But no, I mean, back in February, they lost to the Knicks early on. They were 11th in the Eastern Conference, and they looked awful. I mean, there was a lot of factors that happened. It looked just terrible. And then they flipped the switch, and they've been the best team in the NBA since. I don't want to act like, I was riding them all season or anything like that, but I definitely wasn't shitting on them. Not like
he had them 6, and I had them 4.
All right.
But you see, Dan,
you were both way wrong.
Dan, what you said kind of is my concern is that they had to flip switches to get things done. They had to turn things off. They started off shitty. They came back. They did this, and it's kind of like they're all over the court. You don't know really you have a chance to put this thing away at Game 6 on your home court in one of the most hallowed basketball gyms in the world, and you can't get it done. And
But
then
then you get it
flip
done
on
in
the-
Game 7.
Then you get it done. I was going there.
Yeah, but
You
and
get
a
it
lot of
done,
that,
you
Jimmy
flip
Butler
the
going
switch.
off for like 50 points. I mean, he played
You
out of his
flip the
mind. He got the
switch.
win.
Well,
You know what this reminds me of, guys?
You just told me how good a defensive team
They're the
Celtics
best
are,
defensive
yet they
team in
let
the
Butler.
NBA.
They let Butler rip him for 50. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and they won the game. Well, they won the series.
I know in my era of playing, if somebody was hitting us for 50, he wasn't going to get there. He was going to pay an ugly price before he got to 50. There's no way anybody was going to score 50 points on me or our team.
Well, yeah, because it's also like the game's, 16 minutes shorter? Or
Well, an equivalent.
8 minutes shorter, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Plus, I guarantee you any
equivalent
NBA team would have scored 50 points on you with a player in 1981 against the Indiana Hoosiers. But I think what this reminds me of is what the St. Louis Blues did in the NHL a few years ago. You remember where they were completely out of it, like the middle of January. Then they kick it in, and nobody interrupted you, Steve. Why do you have to interrupt me?
No, I wasn't done.
Yeah, you
But
were.
Go ahead. No.
Okay. That is my choice to choose. I chose that you were done. All right, Dan, you agree with me, right? No, I'm kidding. But, I mean, Bobby, you watched the NHL, I think. I mean, isn't this kind of what we saw the St. Louis Blues do a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I watch a little more NHL than maybe Dan does, but I'm still not any kind of expert at all. So, yeah, I think even the year before that, they were one of the worst teams and were absolutely abysmal. Then the next year, you're right, they got off to a terrible start. I think they were even last in the NHL at one point in January. And actually, I think some crazy St. Louis Blues fan actually threw some money on them. That's also how I kind of remember that because they were showing the receipts around the time that they were making their run. And, they were some crazy number, like plus, 5,000 or something to win the Stanley Cup. And they actually won the Cup. So we've seen teams do it. And I think the Celtics, are better than people are giving them credit for. Now, all three of us, at least so far, picked the Warriors. But, hey, I mean, the Celtics made it here. And really every team's gotten blown out in these playoffs. Even the Warriors got destroyed by like 50 by the Grizzlies in one of those games. So I hope we don't have any of those games. But it's not just the Celtics that have kind of had the switch flip off at times. The Warriors have had some clunkers themselves.
Yeah, and I think this, when you talk about the Celtics, they had a new coach. They had some new players. It took a while for those guys to become a cohesive unit. It took a while for that coach to figure it out. So, Steve, when you look at that, I would compare it to the 1981 Hoosiers. I mean, you guys obviously weren't any good because at one point you were 9-7. North Carolina was the better team. Everybody thought they were. They'd beaten you in the regular season earlier that year when you guys were on the 9-7 streak. But it doesn't really matter how good you are the first 2 months. It matters how good you are the last month.
Yeah.
There, I used an 81 Indiana Hoosier reference. Does that make you happy?
Well, it's not, but your lack of knowledge comes through.
What lack of knowledge would that be?
The Indiana Hoosiers struggled in 1981, not because we were trying to figure ourselves out. It's because we were trying to get Knight and Isaiah Thomas off each other's ass.
So you were trying to figure shit out. So I was right.
No, we were trying to we were trying to get them to figure it out. The rest of the team was ready to go.
Oh, okay.
There was those two button heads in the locker room.
But the only thing that mattered on that team was those two.
In terms of where leadership was going to fall, yeah, but it's a different scenario.
Which is in terms of winning a national championship.
Well, yeah, those two figured it out, and Knight caved, and Isaiah took over the team, and we never got touched.
So I would think that I was correct then, wasn't I? What I said.
Because
you guys were 9-7, and you had to figure things out. So it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. You're right.
I mean, we watched the Bengals go 7-6.
I have learned
Dan
a
was
long
ripping
time
me.
ago. I'm never going to win an argument with you when you want to win it. So you get this one. Cheers to you.
Thank you, because I am infinitely more intelligent. Okay.
No problem. Let's have a gun debate after this.
You don't want to have a gun debate with me because you ain't got the guns to have the debate, dude. All right, so now I'm sure you guys want to talk about the WNBA, correct?
Oh, so bad. Brittany Griner, right?
No, not really.
I don't know about the WNBA.
Nobody cares. If that was Kevin Durant, his ass would have been home 2 days after they arrested him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, NBA
But
star, much bigger deal.
all right, guys. So, do we want to do a show a couple games into the series?
Yeah, wait,
Yep.
hold on, Mike. Who did you pick?
Oh, I didn't pick anybody. So I'll pick somebody. So you know how this rolls. Everybody picks the one team. I pick the team that wins, and then I end up looking great at the end. I'm going with the Boston Celtics to win this. I think Marcus Smart, I think Williams, I think those guys are going to make the difference. I think Klay Thompson defensively is not what he used to be. I think they're going to have a hard time defending Boston. And I think Boston's going to go in. I think they'll get one of the first two. I think they'll probably split at home again. I think in Game 7 at Golden State, Boston wins in 7. I just think this. I don't think Klay Thompson is a hell of a player, but I think it's really safe to say he's not what he was a couple of years ago, right? So Steph Curry has never been the guy to step up and make the plays. He has to step up and make them now. The pressure is on Steph Curry. There's no pressure on the Celtics. They were struggling to even make the playoffs a couple months ago. Now all of a sudden they're in the NBA Finals. I think the pressure is off of them. I think that they are a team that has played better on the road than they have at home, which is a really good thing. And I think championship teams do that. I mean, Golden State's been good home and away, but let's face it. The Memphis Grizzlies were a good team, but Ja Morant missed a couple games at the end of that series, right? We don't know what happens if Morant plays, just like we don't know what happens with the Celtics as Middleton plays. So I think that the East was a tougher road to get through. I think Boston's well coached. I think they're the better defensive team. And I think what people are missing is the Warriors have played in a lot of finals. They've got a lot of experience. But Steve was talking about Al Horford at 35. The Warriors have a lot more miles on their legs. If the Celtics can push this series 6-7 games, those three-pointers might be a lot harder to make, especially the way Boston switches on defense, the way they harass you. Steph Curry is not the youngest man in the world anymore. Neither is Klay Thompson. I think really if Golden State wins this series, the MVP of the series could be a guy like Jordan Poole.
I go back to the statistic I threw out there. The Warriors outscored by 7 points in the first 3 quarters in 16 playoff games so far. Outscore their opponents by 94 in the fourth quarter. I don't think conditioning or leg strength is going to matter in this game. If you can outscore your opponents in the 16 playoff games by 94 points and lose by 7 in 3 quarters time in all 16 games.
I don't know what that matters, though.
That's a telling statistic. The endurance and stamina are not going to be a factor in this game.
I think if Dallas played Boston, it would end in 4 or 5 games. I mean, I think you're comparing apples to oranges because the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, hell, that's the equivalent of the Brooklyn Nets in the first round for the Boston Celtics. The Dallas Mavericks are a one-man show. It's a hell of a show. But I don't think you could compare the two. The Dallas Mavericks defensively are not a great defensive team.
Like I wasn't comparing anybody to anybody.
You are when you're telling me that a stat like that.
It shows what the medal of the Warriors.
Fuck, it's important. You just made your fucking comment. Let me make mine. Mine is this. My comment is I don't remember what the hell it was because I got interrupted when I'm trying to fucking have a thought and fucking talk. But that's all right. I mean, shit. You can go ahead. You just talk whatever the fuck you want. But my point is this, dude. I mean, what the hell does it matter what they did before? You can sit there and say they got outscored by 7 here and they outscored them in the fourth quarter by 94, but you're dealing with a Dallas team that does not defend greatly. Boston defends. You're not going to be able to score points that easy on Boston. Also, Dallas has, 2-3 guys that are legit scoring threats. The Boston Celtics have 4 or 5 guys that are legit scoring threats. And you got guys coming off the bench that have shown they're capable of doing something. So in the end, we'll see who's right. I say the Celtics in 7. I think the MVP of the series will be Jason Tatum. Now, he does worry me in the last couple minutes of games because I think he does kind of disappear. So if he steps up, they win. If he continues to disappear, Golden State wins. This is still not as good as the 1984 Celtics and Lakers series. All you kids sitting down below, you missed all the good shit.
Clearly.
Yeah, we missed some of it, but
no, you missed all of it. There's been nothing good in the NBA
80s,
in the last 20 years. Yeah, 80s.
There we go.
Well, it's true. I mean, the 1980s, you had legendary teams. You don't have legendary teams anymore. You got legendary players that all group together to try to win something. And I hate to tell you this, but the Lakers and Celtics in the mid-'80s would beat all these teams to death.
Probably. They played better team ball, but I saw some great teams late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
Well, also, you've got a lighter, smaller ball to shoot, too.
It's fair to say.
And the three-point line has been moved in a foot and a half, which helps also. That's why when people say Steph Curry is the greatest shooter of all time, he's really good, but give me Reggie Miller or Larry Bird. Maybe that's just because I'm Indiana, and especially in the clutch, Steph Curry doesn't make a pimple on Reggie Miller's ass. Can I get an amen, Steve?
Amen.
There you go.
I mean, that's fair to say. Steph is
Any man that can score 13 points or 9 points in 13 seconds or 13 points.
No, it was 9 points in 8 seconds.
8 seconds. Gets my vote for the best player.
Against, who was that against?
Steve,
was that against the New York Knicks?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Luckily, are you guys even old enough to remember it?
Spike Lee was sitting there.
No, that was Game 5 of '94 the year before, and then you had Patrick Ewing missing like a layup at the end of Game 7 in the Pacers' advance.
So great.
It's all right. At least Reggie never won a chip, so I'm pleased.
Why are you pleased? You don't like Reggie?
I mean, the Knicks suck. We know that, but
Knicks always.
I didn't like Reggie Miller as a player. Actually, I'm fine with him now as a broadcaster. But
yeah, you didn't like him because he kicked your ass all the time.
Yeah, you're right. That's why,
and really, in '99, you shouldn't have even been in the finals because Larry Johnson got that bullshit 4-point play.
Hey, whatever it takes. We've seen many bad calls over the years. So.
Yeah, and usually all of them went in favor of the Knicks and the Bulls against the Pacers.
Well, the Knicks didn't get their calls, on Charles Smith missing a bunch of bunnies when he got fouled. So.
Oh, Jesus. In a series, they lost in 6. And let's face it, that Knicks team.
Well, that
couldn't shoot
changed the whole
ball.
course. They would have been up 3-2 if they won that game.
And it wouldn't have mattered. They'd have still lost because Patrick Ewing was one of the biggest choke artists in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, probably.
Plus, he was dumb as shit. Can I get an amen, Steve?
Amen.
He is absolutely horrible, putrid. As Dan would say, he's trash as an NBA or as a college basketball coach also.
Mike, I don't think there was a good Knicks team since, 1970 with Reed
yeah, but the thing is this, that 1970 team, that 1970 team's probably a top 5 or 6 team of all time.
Of all time, yeah.
Well, 70 through 73.
Clyde, Earl the Pearl.
Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley.
Stockton. Wasn't Stockton on that team?
Huh? Stockton?
Yeah, where was a guy named Stockton?
Damn, you lost me, Steve.
We watched.
Willis Reed. Meminger. Was Meminger on that team?
Dean Meminger? I think he might have been a backup. He was also the principal. Wasn't he like the guy in charge of the school at Animal House?
That was Dean Wormer.
Oh! Well, hell, Dan's seen Animal House, though, right, Dan?
Bits and pieces, yes.
Oh, jeez. You
right along with Mrs. Dean Wormer.
Mrs.
Dean
Wormer? You know, the thing that's sad is, once again, our numbers are going sky high now since we stopped talking about the
where she's deciding whether cucumbers are sensual or sensuous.
What's according to where she's putting them.
Exactly.
Where do you prefer your cucumbers, Dan?
In a salad.
In a salad. All right, head over now and see for yourself. Cucumbers are awesome at betting.net. That makes it easy to find all the legal online casinos or sportsbooks in your state. Make sure you go check out betting.net. All right, Bobby, I have to ask you this in closing. Where do you prefer your cucumbers?
I'm going to go with what Dan said as well. In my salad, sliced up, not anywhere else. The ladies can do what they want with the cucumbers.
Bullshit.
What's that mean, Dan?
I could have said the same about you.
Dan? So you guys fight all the time like this? Like little kids?
Sometimes. I've known Bob for a long time, so
you guys have to learn to be more mature like Mike and I.
Yes.
I know.
Because me and Dipshit don't make stupid-ass comments like that.
Yeah.
Never.
Where do you like to put your cucumbers, Steve?
At 63 and living in California, wherever it wants to go.
All right, guys. You guys want to plan on coming back maybe next Monday night? Review the first two games, preview the next game or two?
I'm game.
That works. Yeah, we'll be, what, 2 games in at that point? So
Yeah, we'll be
Thursday,
2 games in at that point. It'll be 1-1, and I'll be looking good.
Hey, Mike, let's do something for next Monday night, though. Let's start the show at 8 o'clock, but let's tell Dan we're starting at 7:45.
We'll have to tell him we start at 7:30 to get him on time.
Yeah, that we just might get him on time.
Look at him. He's sitting there like he's stupid. You know,
Oh, he's notoriously late for everything else in our lives, so, it's fitting.
are you guys, so have you guys gotten married yet, or are you just dating?
I'm married.
To Dan?
No.
Well, you just made a comment that he is constantly late in you guys' lives. So I just thought maybe you were an item.
No,
So Dan's married. Dan's not married. But Bobby's married. That explains it. So Dan is the only immature person on the network.
Oh.
So, well, hey, if there's any ladies out there that find Dan attractive, you can hit us up at thegruelingtruth@gmail.com. You live in New Jersey, right, Dan?
New York.
New York. So if you live in New York, thegruelingtruth@gmail.com. We'll hook you up with Dan. Let's see if we get Dan a date, Steve. Don't you think that's a good idea?
What
Yeah,
could go
sure.
wrong?
I'm game.
Get him out of his shell. I mean, have you ever been on a date with a lady, Dan?
Does going to get ice cream with my mom or going to the diner with my mom count?
It's according to how close you and your mom are, Dan.
Gross.
All right, guys. Anybody got anything else before we wrap it up?
Degenerate. Have you seen Blazing Saddles yet?
He's not.
No, I haven't. It's not on anywhere free.
I bet Bobby's seen Blazing Saddles, haven't you,
Yeah, it's
Bobby?
on Netflix for free.
No, it's not.
It's funny. You
Netflix or
mentioned those.
Hulu, one of the two.
I haven't seen Blazing Saddles or Animal House since I watched them like 20 years ago.
But at
late
least
night.
you've seen them.
I've seen them, but
They're
I
not
don't
nearly
get
as
all
good now as what they
Yeah.
were in the mid 70s and late 70s when they came out.
They wouldn't
Yeah.
be made now.
Yeah, they wouldn't be made now.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't be able to make them now.
They
Have
did
you guys
something
seen
real
Top
cool.
Gun 2 yet?
I have
Not yet,
not.
but I
I
want
want
to.
to see it though, badly, because I'm hearing great reviews. Not that I like the original Top Gun, but I'm not like super crazy Top Gun person. But I mean, seeing how everyone's raving about it and it broke records, yeah, I want to see it now.
Dan or Steve, you should be able to get us a copy, shouldn't you, through your son?
Tried. He didn't. He couldn't pull that one off. That was with that ship sailed and.
Well, I think they said the movie made $300 million over the weekend.
worldwide. I think
So it's
it
good to see that Tom Cruise will have a retirement cushion now.
is. Yeah, he could buy another helicopter.
Another helicopter. Steve owns a helicopter.
No, I just sold it.
Oh, you sold it? All right. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, thegruelingtruth@gmail.com if you're interested in dating Dan. Is that ladies only, Dan, or are you open to pretty much whatever?
Take whatever. at
Hoping
this
for
point.
ladies, but it's 2022, so you know what? We'll see what happens.
All right.
Wow.
Woo! All right, remember, betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes, so you don't have to. Head over to their website now to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits. Check them out at betting.net, and remember to click on Caesars Sportsbook on the link in the description of this video and YouTube. But for now, for Dan Kornhauser, Bobby Hunt, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.